best of 1 versus best of 3. So I was reading this comment, and I saw the part about the whole no one was expecting Boma when it won the regionals and stuff like that. Well, one, I was, and two, it's Boma. There's nothing new. It's been there, done that. It's like we're acting like Boma is a new deck. Like the concept is new. It's not new. It's an old strategy. You use a whole bunch of little 1-drops and you recycle them over and over again. Use them to block a whole bunch of attacks, right? So it's a defensive deck, and then it's best of 1. Why wouldn't you play a defensive deck best of 1 to increase your chances of not getting aggro to death? Logically, right? Because in best of 1, since you only got 1 game to determine, if you win or lose, you want something that's fast, right? You want something that can get you to win faster or lose faster. Because you don't want a long hatch-yak style play, right? Game, right? Where game 1 takes up all best of 3, right? All 3 of the games, right? Because just game 1 against a deck like hatch-yak, for example, can literally waste up the whole entire time you have. So if you have an hour for a best of 1, a whole hour for best of 3, hatch-yak can literally eat up that whole entire time. Not to mention other factors that attribute to time being spent so quickly, or a lot of time being spent on just one game. So obviously there's certain decks, certain strategies that certain leaders that definitely can take advantage of time. And especially when you have time rules where whoever has the most life wins, right? Well, all you have to do is make sure you take less hits than your opponent, make sure you hit them more than they hit you, sneak in a couple of double strikes here and there, and you have the advantage. As long as you can keep your defenses up, right? You can keep the damage you take to a minimum, you'll win. So with that, regardless if you're playing best of 1 or best of 3, that is the general way of that's the basic form of the game. You're playing to make sure you have more life than your opponent, so no matter what happens, you win. You win because of time. You win because you got the final attack in and got your opponent down to 0, or they decked out. Those are the 3 most common ways you would typically win, right? Another possibility is they scoop, right? They're like, you know what, this is taking too long. Let's just you win. Let's go to the next game. I'm going first, siding, blah blah blah. If you're playing best of 3, or if you're playing best of 1, some people actually scoop to their opponent just because it was, the matchup was pointless for them because they felt like they definitely would have lost or they definitely will lose, so they didn't even play. So they just gave the W to their opponent, right? Stuff like that happens, and that's the thing is when you know that certain decks, certain leaders can take full advantage of time, right? The time that you're allotted to play, whether it's 30 minutes best of 1 or 60 minutes best of 3, whatever deck can can use, right, the most amount of time, that can take the most amount of time in order for your plays to be played out. So if you're playing a whole bunch of 1-drop searchers, right, that's going to take time because you have to search, you have to shuffle, cut, right, then make another move. Especially if you play a searcher, right? Search did all that, and then right afterwards you played another searcher. It's like, oh damn it, we're going through the process all over again, and that's further wasting time, right? You're burning the clock. So then it becomes some people, I heard a couple times say that the game is, boils down to dice rolls and stuff like that. It's like, no. Whoever goes first does tend to have more time, if I'm right, than whoever goes second, right? Because you're always one turn before your opponent, right? So when you're on your turn 4, after your opponent just finished their turn 3, right? So you're going So then when your turn ends, they're going to their turn 4. So if you got 4 turns and your turn's about to end and then time gets called, well, your opponent only got 3 turns, hypothetically, right? Only got 3 turns. That means they got 1 turn less than you, just because you went first. And that's time related, right? And if you use that time, those forward turns, to do the most amount of damage, to set up your defense and whatnot, to greatly increase your chances that, you know, even if they did get to turn 4, right, there's not much they can do, or there's very little they can do other than waste time, right? Which is going to hurt them anyway, especially if they have less life than you. And then when time gets called, you win because you have more life, right? So there's that. That's why being careful about using sparking negates and blocker negates, stuff like that, or any effect, or even a leader that takes life or starts at low life. You try to avoid using those types of leaders or effects, because if your opponent takes advantage of that, hits you, you know, at least just double strike 1 time and then defends for the rest of the game, then they'll win just by that alone. And that's the only strategy you have, the only way to win. I just played I just played for like 56 minutes with my Hatchiak mill deck, my blue Hatchiak mill. I milled my opponent out. I still had like 11 cards left in my deck or something like that. Or yeah, like about 11 cards left in my deck, and they decked out. Clearly they had like a 50 card deck. I had a 60 card deck, obviously, so that right there gives me the advantage when it comes to the whole deck out thing. So these are, you know, factors I take into account. That if the game goes long, then time becomes a huge factor. More often, more in-game best of 1 than best of 3, because best of 3, you can use a lot of time. You can use 30 plus minutes, even 40 minutes, for example, just for game 1, and then try to do some damage and wait out the clock in game 2, and then win that way. So basically, it just, even when you're playing best of 3, it just feels like best of 1, which is why it's important you win game 1, because if time runs out in game 2, or you do play out game 2 and you get to game 3, but there's so little time left in game 3 that by the time you get to turn 2, boom, you know, the game's over. And then, you know, the time rules get applied. So that's why it's very important to win game 1, because if a tie happens, then whoever won game 1 automatically wins. And that's all it really boils down to. There's very little skill, because it's not about, you know, dealing the most damage, right? Dealing 8 damage, or decking your opponent out, right? Because that might take a long time to do so with certain decks. Some decks faster than others, but you get the idea. You know, so you gotta understand that there's going to be there's going to be a time component when you're playing competitive. When you play casual, yeah, then it just boils down to whoever succeeds in their strategy, whether it's to burn their opponent for game, deal the last 2 damage, right, with a double strike and dumping your own hand into the attack type thing, right, or that's it, and milling them out, right. The fact that they just ran out of cards on their deck and you just won because of that. That's how, you know, casual play is. The game ain't over until the game is actually over. But competitive, there's a time component, so the game is over when, you know, the event says it's over, when the round says it's over. So you're literally playing not only against the clock, as they say, you're also playing with the clock. So then your strategy, the way you play your deck, the way you play at the event, is based off of time, not off of your skills, right? Your experience, your lines of play per se, the deck choices, you know, matchup, your matchups. People, you know, always talk about the matchups, like, you know, some decks are bad matchups and this, that, and there's like, if the deck's really good at defense, then yeah, it's a bad matchup if you're a very aggressive deck, but your opponent is a very defensive deck. So it's a rock and a hard place, right? It's a sword versus a shield type of situation. So that's why it's important to keep an eye out for what's going to be viable. I was playing Hatch. There was people playing, some aggro decks, whether it was, what was it called? Trunks Jita. That was my round 1 opponent. The irony. I keep playing round 1 against Trunks Jita, so I'm dealing with an aggro deck. Some people playing, obviously Drip Cooler Unison deck. U7 GT, is out there. There's some aggro decks. Of course, Gamma 1, Gamma 2. Saw a lot of them. But I didn't play against Gamma 1, Gamma 2. But I did play against Android 16. That was doing some stuff. I went up against Cell. That was the fastest matchup. That's the one that I lost the quickest. was that. So he did good. He had a lot of damage. And he was able to use a lot of damage, and he was able to put things out really quick. With very little energy, he was able to put out multiple attacks. So that was always good. So that's something I had to worry about. But it's I have to just keep an eye out, for what my opponent's card effects do, right? Pay attention, because I had a spark in the gate, and I could have stopped his double strike 8-drop swinging on the second attack. I stopped his first attack. I didn't stop his second attack because I didn't know it was double strike. So by the time I realized it was double strike, it was already too late. It's like, oh damn, and I can't out combo the attack, so I'm taking the hit. So I lost out that game real quick. But you win some, you lose some. But the thing is that I'd rather have lost quickly and had a lot of free time to do other things, watch other people play, than to have a long, drawn out game just to still end up losing, right? That would suck to literally spend 30 minutes just to still end up losing. That's why it's important to have a win con, have a strategy, at least have a backup strategy. If you can't achieve your win con, at least make sure you have more life than your opponent, and then just defend until the time plays out in your favor, which is an unfortunate thing, especially when you pride yourself on being a skillful player, having a strategy, having a really good deck. That it all boils down to your the clock, right, the time, and then that's the main determining factor if a deck wins or loses. So matchup is less relevant, and I've said this many times before, that every deck is pretty much the same deck. Like an aggro deck is an aggro deck, a control deck is a control deck, a mill deck is a mill deck, a burn deck is a burn deck. Like it's just different art, right? Different costs sometimes, right? Like there was a time where aggro was a whole bunch of free play, and then they hit some of the free plays, and now you gotta pay 1 energy for your aggro stuff. Whoop-de-doo, you gotta pay 1 more than you used to, but you're still playing a whole bunch of stuff and you're aggroing. And then now they got a whole bunch of 1-drop unisons, and then you're aggroing with that, and then you got a leader that essentially plays a unison for free, so it's a combination of free play and 1 energy play, so that kind of stuff. So it's just funny, but the thing is the point I'm making is that every deck's the same, therefore based off of whatever they are. If they're an aggro deck, all aggro decks are the same. If it's a control deck, all control decks are the same. It's just different colors, different appearance, and that's about it. Like most of the play lines are different enough to be interesting, to be fun, to not feel boring doing the same old, right? But pretty much every blue deck has God Sealing Trunks. Like, how many times you're gonna see that? Every green deck has Caramel Villain Frieza. How many times you're gonna see that? Ribrianne, right? And the list goes on. Been there, done that. Nothing new, right? Dormant Potential, Violent Rays, Baby Hatch, and the list goes on and on. We have so many staples that, like I said, every deck's pretty much the same. For me to still see Baby Hatch in Androids, or even seeing Android 17 turn their tides in, the Gamma 1, Gamma 2 deck, right? It's like, still seeing blue good stuff, seeing the Boo Unison, right? Majin Buu Unison. It's like, yep, it's a good card. Even I use it, right? Because it's good. So, and it's very busted. That needs to get errated, so it's a -2 for its effect. It's too powerful being a -1, but that's for a different conversation. But anyway, like I was trying to say, was the fact that, when it comes to just, like the surprise factor, like, oh, no one knew what to do against Bulma. It's like, Bulma's nothing new, so everybody should already know what Bulma's capable of. I always take to account that anything is possible. Every deck is viable. Like I said, nothing really new. If the best defensive deck in last format, let's say it was like a yellow deck or something, or even a green deck. Let's say King Cold with the field cards and stuff like that. Like, let's say that was the Bulma of that format. Then don't be surprised that in this format, Bulma is Bulma, right? The Bulma of this format. Not too surprising, right? Just like you're not too surprising if people want to play Hatch. I wasn't the only Hatch player at the event, right? So, so no one should be surprised. Especially, there's been months leading up to the event that tons of people were posting. I even posted up some Bulma deck lists and stuff like that. I've seen people post Bulma deck lists, so I'm not too surprised that somebody played Bulma, because we've been seeing deck lists and deck profiles and gameplays popping up of Bulma, of Hatch deck, and so forth and so forth. So it's like, the main thing is there's a lot of viable things. A lot of the new sets, set 16, set 17 gave us a lot of new toys for it. Like right off the bat, when we got the baby Unison, the red Unison, immediately me and many other players were like, oh, that'd be perfect in Bulma. Bulma can use a Unison like that, because it helps you get rid of any problematic threat, because it's not enough to block attacks. You gotta get rid of what's attacking, right? So this will be a great card to help get rid of attackers, right? And not only that, you don't have to waste your blockers to defend the Unison, like how you normally would have to do with many of your other Unisons that you would play. This can protect itself, so that way you can keep your blockers to protect your Bulma. So clearly this is an auto-include in Bulma decks. So no surprise people playing Bulma. No surprise. We literally got a new card for the deck, and that's what happened. It just gave the Bulma deck more power. So no surprise that it was this being played. Just like this was a best of one of it. So no surprise that you're gonna play a anti-aggro deck or a aggro deck. That's all most matches boil down to. You could play control, right, which tries to be mid-range, right, where it tries to be anti-aggro but a little bit aggro, you know what I mean? And then of course Mill obviously is gonna be defensive right off the bat, right, because it has to be anti-aggro, and then it will try to mill you out, and that's it. There's not many different strategies for winning out the game, because the way you win is your opponent's life hits 0, or you have more life than your opponent, or your opponent runs out of resources, right, runs out of cards in their deck. Unless you have an auto win con like the Beerus leader pays 16 and you auto win, unless you have something like that, the most common way you're gonna win is because of time, because your opponent ran out of life, or they ran out of cards in their deck. And that's it. How you get there doesn't really matter. It's just, how do you want to get there? You want to get there on a bike You want to get there on a Lamborghini, you want to get there on the bus, right? All these are different modes of transportations, right? But they all get you to your destination regardless. So it doesn't matter what deck you play. What matters is you getting to your destination, right? How do you want to win? And then you play what best suits you. If you like to play defense, then Boma, Hatchak, and leaders like that is your best bet. You like to play aggro. You don't want to take too long. You don't want the game to take too long. You're okay with winning or losing quickly, then that's what you'll do. So like I said, it doesn't matter what you play as long as it gets you to your goal. And like I've explained, the stuff to expect when you play competitively. It's not going to boil down to, you know, creative lines of play or outplaying your opponent. You know, sometimes a little bit here and there, but not as much. It just boils down to taking less damage, to deal as much damage as you can to your opponent, at least enough that they have less than you, right? Less life than you, and hopefully you can make the game take longer to complete, so that way time is in your favor, or you know, time is in your favor as in your opponent decks out, or time is in your favor because the match is over and you have more life, you know, more. And like I said, it's very important to win game one, whether it's best of 1 or best of 3. Game 1 is top priority. Gotta win it, because if not, your chances of losing is very high. What else? But that's the main thing. It was just the whole part of the Boma. You know, like no one just expected Boma, and so it caught people off guard and blah blah blah. It's like that's bullshit. If you're a competitive player, Boma, definitely Boma should not catch you off guard. That she's a set 8 leader, and we're in currently set 17. Like, come on. It's like saying, oh, Hatchiak caught us off guard or something. Like, really? There's only one Hatchiak leader, just like there's only one Boma leader. It's not too unique and too obscure that no one knows what Boma does or what Hatchiak does. Y'all know what it does. Same thing it will always do in every format. It's going to be relevant if it's relevant. So all it takes is a player who wants to play the deck in order for it to be relevant. Doesn't have to be specific cards per se, because when I saw the Boma lists, is nothing new. I was like, okay, I just same old. The only thing new was the baby Unison. That's the only new thing. Think about one card. You can say, oh well, about the Vegeta SCR. What was I saying? You know, the you know, SCR, but we've had many different SCRs, red SCRs used in Boma. We had the Gohanks used in Boma. We had the what is it called? I mean, we've if I'm right, the GT, the big GT Super Saiyan Goku SCR in Boma. We've had the the other stuff, Goku and Frieza, you know, a miraculous conclusion. Like, we've had that. We've had Frieza's army squad or something. Frieza's squad reborn or something. We've had a couple red SCRs that was used in Boma, along with certain tech cards or unisons. Like, for example, the I forgot which one it was, but it's the one where you -4, pay 2 red, X amount of energy, and do that much damage to your opponent. No, it's 4 red energy and X. But you get my point. That is it King Piccolo? I think it's a King Piccolo unison, and you know, where people will use Boma to stall long enough to have enough energy to use that card to burn their opponent for game. So, like, nothing new. Whenever there's some decent new red card, whether it's an SCR, a unison, maybe even some battle cards. I seen a Boma GT deck. I played against it. It was nice. And that's the thing about this Boma list, is that it also uses the GT 8-drop in the deck, and it uses it like it's an SER, so not surprising. So that 8-drop and the Unison are the two new cards that came out recently, and this, the Vegeta SER, are the only new things that Boma's playing. Everything else is all the old stuff they always use, generic stuff. So nothing new there when it comes to Boma. But like I said, it's like in general nothing really new when it comes to what people are playing. So what else is here? Well, clearly this comment has a lot to say. Woo! Definitely would be interested in reading all that later on, seeing what that's about. It definitely was a lot, but it was interesting nonetheless. Just the idea of what's going on competitively. Like I was saying, nothing's really new. I mean, especially if you're a competitive player, nothing should be new to you. You should be aware of old decks, old metas, seeing if any of these old decks can come back into the meta. That's what you always assume, that old decks can be viable again. We obviously look to see what new decks will be viable. For example, at the regionals, I saw a whole bunch of Gamma decks. So that right there lets you know that out of all the new archetypes, Gamma's popular. Gamma and Trunks Vegeta was the most common decks I saw. Saw a lot of other stuff. Saw some Cell decks, but you get the idea. It's like people are going to play what they want to play, and the good thing is like there is a lot of variety, so it'd be hard to try to figure out the exact decks that people are going to be using. The best thing you can do is just assume that anything is viable, anything that's good is viable. Pretty much anything that's aggro, anything that's defensive, especially in best of one, it's just going to be aggro versus defense. Yeah, control will be a factor, like defense, control or aggro control or mid-range, whatever you want to call it. Like, that's it. Just a variation of offense and defense. That's all it really ever boils down to, and how you utilize offense and defense. Like I said, if you do your opponent at least one damage and keep and keep them from hitting your life, you'll win just by that alone. It'll just take your deck having a good amount of defense, you having experience with the combo step and things of that nature, and of course deck knowledge, like of your opponent's deck, also is helpful. Obviously, knowledge is power. The more you know, the better. Knowing is half the battle, as they say. So keep that in mind. And that's about it. I just wanted to talk about Boma basically. And that's the end of the video.